The area of composite figures. When finding the area of composite figures, it is useful to think of the original basic shapes that were used to create the more complicated figure. So now the areas of the basic shapes can be calculated, and then we can use those to determine the area of the composite figure by adding those up. So remember, area is always measured in square units. So these units could include square inches, square feet, square yards, square millimeters, square centimeters, square meters, and so on. So the easiest way to think about this is within that composite shape is to sketch the basic shapes that create that composite shape and then use those to determine the area of the composite shape. So yesterday we took a look at how to figure out areas of regular simple shapes. So those are the shapes that we know names for, like square, rectangle, circle, triangle, and so on. We're going to use those formulas to help us out today when we're figuring out the area of composite figures. Example number 1, we can separate this shape into a rectangle, and we can separate it into a square or another rectangle. And I'm going to do that by drawing an imaginary line that separates the longer rectangle up top with the smaller rectangle down below. So I'm going to label this part 1 and this part 2. If I remember from yesterday's lesson, the area of a rectangle is length times width. So I'm going to do the area of shape 1 is equal to the length times the width. And remember, you can denote the length and the width by showing them on your diagram so that you can enter them in the right spot. So my length in this one is 10 and my width is 2. So when I calculate those, so 10 times 2 gives me 20. My units in this case is centimeters, and it's squared because it's area. Now I'm going to figure out the area of my second shape, so the area of my second rectangle. So the area of shape 2, again, is equal to length times width. In this case, I'm going to make my length 5 and my width 3. So I have 5 times 3. Which gives me 15. I always have to include my units, which is centimeters squared. So once I've determined the area of shape 1 and shape 2, I can work out the total area by taking the area of shape 1 and adding that to the area of shape 2. So I'm going to take my 20 and add it to 15, which gives me 35, and I have to include my units, centimeters squared. In example number 2, same thing, I want to separate this into shapes that I know how to calculate the area for using the formula sheet from the other day. So in this case, I have a rectangle and I have a right angle triangle. So I'm going to label my rectangle shape 1 and my triangle shape 2. Remember that the area of a rectangle is length times width. I'm going to make my length 3 and my width 6. If you switch those around, that's fine. So my length is 3, my width is 6, and when I multiply those together, I get 18. In this example, my units are meters and it's area, so I have to square that. My formula to find the area of shape 2 is a triangle, so I want to take my base times my height and I divide by 2. So I'm using the formulas from the given formula sheet the other day. So in this case, my base is going to be 5 and my height is going to be this measurement right here. Now the height of this expression right here, we can calculate by taking 6 and taking away 3. So the height is 6 because that's the total height of this side, but I'm taking away this little part right here, which ends up giving me 3 meters. So now the height of this triangle is 3 meters. So I have 5 times 3 divided by 2, or 15 divided by 2, which gives me 7.5. I have to include my units, which is meters squared. The last step I want to do is calculate the total area of my composite shape, which is taking the dimensions for area 1 and adding it to the dimensions for area 2. So in this case, I have 18 plus 7.5, and that gives me an answer of 25.5 meters squared. The last example we're going to look at involves this composite shape, which is a rectangle and part of a circle. So this part of a circle is actually a quarter of a circle. I'm going to label my quarter of a circle as shape 1 and my rectangle as shape 2. It might be easier to calculate the area of shape 2 first before we calculate the area of shape 1. But you can do it in any order that you see fit. So let's go ahead and calculate the area of shape 2. Area of shape 2 is a rectangle, so it's length times width. And the length I'm going to represent as 12 and my width as 8. So I have 12 times 8. And 12 times 8 is the same as 96. The units for this shape are meters squared. When we're looking at the area of a circle or part of a circle, I need to think about whether I know the radius or whether I know the diameter. So because I only know a quarter of the circle, this dimension right here is actually going to be the radius. So it's half of the diameter of our circle. So we have to figure out what the radius of the circle is going to be. Well, because the radius of the circle is going to be the same as the radius up here, the radius of my circle is 8. So the radius of my circle is 8 meters. And now I can use that when I try to calculate the area of my circle. So the area of a circle is pi r squared. But because I'm only doing a quarter of a circle, I'm going to take this expression and I'm going to divide by 4. If it was a half circle, I would divide by 2, but because it's a quarter of a circle, I divide by 4. So remember, you can use the value 3.14 to represent pi. My radius, I'm going to substitute as 8 squared, divide by 4. I'm going to follow the order of operations, so I have to do what's in my brackets first, so my exponents first. So 8 squared is the same as 8 times 8, or 64. I'm going to divide this by 4. I'm going to finish my calculations up over here on the side. So I have 3.14 times 64, so I can calculate that. So I'm going to simplify the numerator first. That gives me a value of 200.96, and I'm going to then divide by 4, which gives me an answer of 50.24. And my units are meters squared. So the last step for composite figures is to find the total area. The total area in this one is A1, or the area of my quarter of a circle, being added to the area of my rectangle, or 50.24 plus 96, which gives me a final answer of 146.42, decimal 24, and my units are meters squared.